The alarm never had the chance to wake me. I opened my eyes before the first ray of sunlight touched my bedroom window and stared at the ceiling. My heart was beating too fast for sleep to return. For 7 years, I had imagined this morning in hundreds of different ways. Sometimes I picture myself laughing. Sometimes I imagine crying. Today, I felt strangely calm, as if my mind refused to believe that the finish line was finally here. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. The screen showed Daniel. I answered immediately. "You're awake already?" he asked. "I never slept." He chuckled. "I expected that. I keep thinking something will go wrong." "Ethan," he said firmly, "you've spent 7 years preparing for this moment. Every audit is finished. Every lawyer has approved the contract. Every investor has signed. Today isn't about luck anymore. Today is about collecting what you've already earned." I leaned back against my pillow. "I still remember working from that tiny apartment," I said quietly. "I remember," Dana replied. "The roof leaked every time it rained, and the power went out almost every week. You still refused to quit." I laughed softly. "I almost did." "No," he corrected me. "You almost cried. You never almost quit." His words made me smile. There were many nights when I sat alone, wondering if everyone who called me foolish had been right. While my friends accepted comfortable jobs with stable salaries, I spent every dollar building software that nobody wanted to buy. For years, success felt impossible. Today, everything was different. Daniel cleared his throat. "I'll meet you at headquarters in 40 minutes. I'll be there." And Ethan, "Yeah. After today, your life will never be the same." The call ended. I sat quietly for another minute before standing. The apartment around me was small and simple. The couch had faded with age. The kitchen table still had a scratch from the day Sophia accidentally dropped AT. Daniel held the conference room door open for me. "You ready?" he asked. I looked through the glass wall. A long polished table stretched across the room. Executives in dark suits quietly reviewed documents. Their conversations stopped the moment I stepped inside. "I've been ready for 7 years," I answered, though my hands still felt cold. The lead executive smiled and walked toward me. "Mr. Carter, it's an honor to finally meet you in person." "The honor is mine," I replied as we shook hands. "Please have a seat." I sat down while Grace placed a neat stack of documents in front of me. "The final agreement," she said softly. "Every revision has been approved." Daniel leaned closer. "I've checked every page twice. There's nothing left to worry about." The executive nodded. "Once you sign, your company will officially become part of our global technology group. The funds will be transferred immediately after the final signature." For a second, I simply stared at the papers. 7 years flashed through my mind. The tiny apartment, the unpaid bills, the investors who laughed, the friends who said I should quit, the nights I wondered if my dream was destroying my future. I heard Grace's calm voice. "Ethan," I looked up. "You earned this." I smiled. "I know." I uncapped the pen. My signature took only a few seconds. 7 years had led to those few seconds. When I finished, silence filled the room. Then everyone stood. Applause echoed through the conference room. The executive extended his hand again. "Congratulations. As of this moment, your acquisition is complete." I shook his hand. "Thank you." Daniel pulled me into a quick hug. "I told you this day would come." I almost stopped believing. "But you didn't." Grace laughed softly. "I've never met anyone more stubborn than you." "I'll take that as a compliment." "You should." The executive opened another folder. "Mr. Carter, you'll receive the official public announcement." I tightened my grip on the small velvet box as I walked toward the restaurant entrance. My heartbeat was steady again. Whatever stress I had carried into the conference room was gone. The contract was signed. The company was secure. My future had changed forever. Now all I wanted was to spend a quiet afternoon with the woman I loved. The hostess smiled as I stepped inside. "Good afternoon, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," I replied. "Under Ethan Carter." She checked her tablet. "Your fiancé arrived about 10 minutes ago." I smiled. "Thank you." As I walked toward our table, I noticed Sophia sitting by the window. Sunlight fell across her face, making her look exactly like the woman I had fallen in love with years ago. She looked up and waved. There you are, she called. I'm sorry I'm late. She smiled. I was starting to think your meeting would never end. I pulled out my chair. It took a little longer than expected. So, she asked with curious eyes. Did everything go well? I wanted to tell her everything. I want to say, Sophia, our lives just changed forever. Instead, I forced a smile. It went well. She crossed her arms and narrowed her eyes. That's all you're going to say? You know I can't talk about work today. She sighed dramatically. Always the mysterious businessman. I laughed. I wish I were mysterious. No, she teased. You're just terrible at keeping secrets. If only she knew how difficult this secret really was. A waiter arrived with 2 glasses of water. Are you ready to order? Sophia smiled politely. I'll have the grilled salmon. I looked at the menu without really reading it. The steak, medium. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Sophia leaned forward. So, have you thought any more about the wedding? Every day. She smiled. My mother keeps asking whether we should move the date. I don't want to. Neither do I. I reached across the table. My fingers slowly slipped away from Sophia's hand. She was no longer looking at me. Her eyes stayed fixed on the man walking toward the restaurant entrance. I followed her gaze. The expensive suit, the luxury watch, the confident smile. I recognized him immediately. Victor Langston, a real estate millionaire whose face appeared in business magazines almost every month. I frowned. What is he doing here? Sophia hesitated. I wasn't expecting him. You know him? Before she could answer, Victor walked straight to our table as if he already belonged there. Sophia, he said with a charming smile. I hope I'm not interrupting. She stood so quickly that her chair nearly tipped over. Victor, what are you doing here? I wanted to surprise you. His eyes shifted toward me. And you must be Ethan. I stood and offered a polite handshake. Ethan Carter. He shook my hand lightly, almost carelessly. I've heard a lot about you. I can't say the same. He laughed. I'm sure you will. Without asking permission, he pulled another chair to our table and sat beside Sophia. I looked at her. Sophia? She avoided my eyes. Victor placed a small black gift box on the table. I know you said not to bring anything, he said, but I couldn't help myself. Sophia smiled nervously. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He opened the box. Inside rested a diamond bracelet that sparkled under the restaurant lights. People at nearby tables quietly turned to look. One woman whispered, That must be worth a fortune. Victor smiled proudly. I thought it matched your style. Sophia stared at it without speaking. I finally asked the question that had been growing in my mind. Would someone mind explaining what's happening? Victor leaned back comfortably. I've been getting to know Sophia for the last few months. My heart skipped a beat. I looked at Sophia. What does he mean? She lowered her head. Ethan. No. I shook my head. I stood there without saying a word. The entire restaurant had gone quiet. I could feel dozens of eyes watching us, but none of them mattered. The only person I wanted to hear from was Sophia. I looked straight at her. So, after everything we've been through, this is how it ends? She slowly lowered her eyes. Ethan. No. He interrupted quietly. Don't say my name unless you're ready to tell me the truth. Victor leaned back in his chair with the confidence of someone who believed he had already won. Maybe we should stop making this harder than it has to be. I turned toward him. This conversation doesn't involve you. He smiled. It does now. I ignored him and looked back at Sophia. Tell me one thing. She nodded weakly. Have you already made your choice? She closed her eyes for a second before answering. Yes. That single word felt heavier than every sleepless night I had survived building my company. I took a slow breath. So every promise we made. I'm sorry. Our engagement. I'm sorry. The life we planned together. She began crying. I'm so sorry. Victor suddenly stood and wrapped one arm around her shoulders. You don't have to apologize for choosing the life you deserve. I stared at him. The life she deserves? He nodded confidently. She deserves stability. I laughed bitterly. You mean money? He didn't deny it. I mean reality. He reached into his pocket and casually placed the keys to his red sports car on the table. The expensive logo immediately caught everyone's attention. I can give Sophia the life she's dreamed about. I looked at Sophia again. Is that what this is really about? She hesitated. I've spent years hoping things would change. They already have. What? The words almost escaped my mouth. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to tell her that just a few hours earlier, I had signed the biggest business deal of my life. I wanted to tell her that every Fiancée, the first morning after Sophia left me, felt unreal. I woke up automatically, reached for my phone, and almost called her before I remembered she wasn't mine anymore. My hand froze above the screen. I laughed at myself, but the sound felt empty. Someone knocked on my apartment door. I already knew who it was. When I opened it, Daniel walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look terrible," he said. "I've looked worse." "No, you haven't." He handed me a cup and glanced around the apartment. The engagement photo still hung on the wall. Sophia's favorite blanket was still folded over the couch. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. Daniel sat down across from me. "So, how long are you planning to hide?" "I'm not hiding." "Really? You haven't answered calls. You ignored Grace. You skipped 3 meetings. I needed time." He shook his head. "Ethan, the announcement is only weeks away. Once everyone learns who you really are, Sophia will come running back." I looked into my coffee. "I know. Then tell her now." I slowly shook my head. "No." His eyebrows lifted. "No, I don't want revenge." He stared at me in silence. "What do you want then?" "I want the truth to reveal itself." "The truth already revealed itself," he replied. "She chose Victor." "I know. Then why protect her?" "I'm not protecting her." "That's exactly what you're doing." I leaned back and closed my eyes for a moment. If I tell her now, she'll think I became valuable because of money. And I need to know whether she ever loved me without it. Daniel sighed heavily. "You're a better man than I am." "I don't feel like one." He stood and walked toward the window. "You spent 7 years building your company. Don't spend another 7 mourning someone who couldn't see your worth." I didn't answer. After he left, the apartment became painfully quiet again. I found myself staring at the engagement photo. I remember the day it was taken. The apartment stayed silent after Grace's call ended. I finally answered when she called again. "Ethan," she said gently, "please don't shut everyone out. I'm trying to think." "You've been thinking for 3 days." "I know. The company needs you. I'll be back tomorrow." She paused before asking, "Have you talked to Sophia?" "No." "Good." Before I could reply, another knock came at my door. "I have to go," I told Grace. When I opened the door, I froze. Emma stood there holding a small paper bag. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I stepped aside. "I'm sorry," she whispered the moment the door closed. "You don't have to apologize for someone else's choices." "I know, but I still wanted to." She placed the bag on the table. "My mom baked your favorite cookies." I smiled faintly. "She still remembers?" "She does." We sat in silence until Emma finally spoke again. "I think you deserve the truth." I looked at her. "What truth?" She lowered her voice. "Victor didn't appear out of nowhere." "What do you mean?" "He'd been sending Sophia expensive flowers, jewelry, and designer bags for months." I felt my chest tighten. "Months?" Emma nodded. "At first, she refused them. Then she started accepting them. And she never told me." Emma shook her head. "I am sorry." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a social media notification. Someone had tagged me. I opened it. Victor had posted a smiling photo with Sophia beside his red sports car. The caption read, "Real queens deserve real kings. Grateful to have found someone who knows her worth." Thousands of people were already commenting. "She upgraded. Poor Ethan never had a chance. Money always wins." Each message felt like another punch. Emma watched my face. "You don't have to read them." I locked the phone. "They don't know the truth." "They will." I looked toward the window and took a slow breath. "No," I said quietly. "They'll know their version first." That evening, I forced myself to leave the apartment and return to the office. The building looked exactly the same, yet everything inside me had changed. Grace noticed me the moment I stepped through the door. "You finally came back," she said. "I couldn't hide forever." She smiled gently. "That's the Ethan I know." We walked into the conference room together. She placed several reports in front of me, but I barely looked at them. "You aren't reading a single page," she said. "I'll catch up tomorrow." "Ethan, work can wait. Tell me what you're really feeling." I sighed. I keep asking myself where everything went wrong. Grace folded her arms. "You love her honestly." Don't blame yourself because someone else valued money more than loyalty. Before I could answer, Daniel entered carrying his tablet. I've got more bad news. What happened? I asked. He placed the tablet on the table. Victor had uploaded another video. Sophia stood beside him at a luxury rooftop restaurant while fireworks filled the sky. Victor raised a glass and smiled at the camera. Here's to new beginnings. The comments were even worse than before. She finally found a real winner. Poor Ethan never stood a chance. Dreamers always lose to millionaires. Daniel looked at me carefully. Say the word, and I'll tell every reporter who you really are. I slowly pushed the tablet away. No, Ethan, I mean it. Why? Because if I reveal everything now, people will think I'm fighting for my pride. Grace nodded quietly. So what will you do? I'll wait. Daniel frowned. For what? For the truth to arrive without me chasing it. The room became silent. After a long moment, Grace smiled. You know, that's exactly why your company succeeded. I looked at her. What do you mean? You never rushed. You built everything one honest step at a time. Her words stayed with me. As I left the office that night, I looked at the city lights stretching across. The next morning, I arrived at the office before anyone else. The silence helped me think. I stood by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the city wake up. For the first time in days, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what still remained. A few minutes later, Grace walked in carrying breakfast. I had a feeling you'd be here early, she said. I needed a fresh start. She handed me a sandwich. Then start by eating. I laughed for the first time in days. You're starting to sound like my mother. I'll take that as a compliment. Before I could reply, Daniel entered with another update. The media team confirmed it. What did they confirm? The acquisition announcement goes public in 1 week. My heartbeat quickened. So that's it. That's it, Daniel replied. After next Friday, everyone will know the truth. I nodded slowly. I've waited 7 years. I can wait 1 more week. Daniel smiled. That's the attitude I wanted to hear. The rest of the morning passed quickly as we reviewed expansion plans and future projects. Talking about the company's future reminded me why I had started this journey in the first place. It had never been about becoming rich. It had always been about building something meaningful. During lunch, my phone vibrated again. Another message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me open it. I'm sorry for everything. Please don't tell Sophia I came to see you. Emma. I read the message twice. She was carrying guilt that didn't belong to her. I typed a short reply. You have nothing to apologize for. Take care of yourself. A few seconds later, she answered. You still care about other people, even after what happened. That's why you deserve better. I locked my phone and slipped it into my pocket. Grace looked at me. Good news. Not exactly. Bad news. No. Then what? I smiled quietly. A reminder that kindness still exists. She nodded. The week passed faster than I expected. Every day brought another meeting, another decision, another reminder that my life was moving forward whether I was ready or not. Late Thursday evening, Daniel knocked on my office door. You still working? He asked. I looked up from my laptop and smiled. I figured I'd finish these reports tonight. He walked in and placed 2 cups of coffee on my desk. I had a feeling you'd say that. I accepted one with a grateful nod. Thanks. He sat across from me. Tomorrow changes everything. I know. Are you nervous? A little. He studied my face for a moment. You're not nervous about the announcement? No. Then what is it? I stared at the city lights outside my office window. I'm wondering how people will react when they realize they judged me without knowing the truth. Daniel leaned back in his chair. You can't control what people think. I know, but you can control how you respond. I smiled faintly. I've learned that the hard way. My phone buzzed again. Another notification from social media. Victor had posted yet another glamorous photo with Sophia, standing beside a luxury yacht. The caption read, "The best decisions lead to the best life." Daniel glanced at the screen. Still not going to respond? I locked the phone and set it aside. No, you really mean it. Edo. Why? Because tomorrow doesn't need an argument. He smiled knowingly. It only needs the truth. I nodded. For weeks, people have laughed at me, pitted me, and assumed they knew my story. And tomorrow they'll discover they only knew one chapter. Daniel stood and extended his hand. I'm proud of you, little brother. I shook it firmly. Thank you for believing in me when almost nobody else did. He laughed. I never doubted you for a second. After he left, I switched off the office lights and walked toward the elevator. Tomorrow, the confidentiality agreement would expire. The morning I had waited for finally arrived. I walked into my office carrying a cup of coffee, but I barely tasted it. My eyes stayed fixed on the large digital clock hanging on the conference room wall. The confidentiality agreement would expire at exactly noon. Daniel walked in with a confident smile. You look like you're counting every second. I am. He laughed. I've never seen you this nervous. I'm not nervous about the announcement. Then what? I'm wondering how many people will suddenly remember my name. Grace entered carrying her tablet. The media team is ready. Every major business channel has confirmed the release. She looked at me and smiled. Once the clock hits 12, there's no turning back. I don't want to turn back. Daniel crossed his arms. Good, because the world is about to meet the real Ethan Carter. The room fell silent. The clock changed. My heartbeat grew louder. Grace glanced at me. Last chance to hide. I smiled. I've spent 7 years hiding behind my work. That's enough. The second hand reached 12. Almost instantly, every phone in the room began vibrating. Grace looked down at her screen and laughed. It's happening. Daniel picked up the television remote and turned on the news. The regular program disappeared. A red banner flashed across the screen. Breaking news. The anchor smiled at the camera. We interrupt our scheduled programming for major business news. Carter Dynamics, founded by entrepreneur Ethan Carter, has officially completed one of the country's largest technology acquisitions this year. My photograph filled the screen. Another anchor continued. Industry experts are calling Ethan Carter one of the youngest founders to negotiate a deal of this size. The acquisition is valued in the hundreds of millions of dollars and is expected to reshape the technology sector. I stood silently. Grace nudged my shoulder. Congratulations. Daniel grinned. I told you. I stared at the television for another moment before switching it off. The silence in my office felt louder than the news report. My phone continued vibrating without stopping. Grace picked it up from my desk and laughed. I've never seen this many notifications. I don't need to read them. You might want to. I shook my head. Not today. Daniel looked at me carefully. You're calmer than I expected. I've already lived through the hardest part. The restaurant. I nodded. Nothing anyone says today can hurt more than that. Before either of them could answer, another call appeared on my screen. Richard Bennett, Sophia's father. Daniel noticed the name immediately. Well, that didn't take long. Grace folded her arms. Are you going to answer? I smiled faintly. I already know what he's going to say. The phone stopped ringing. A few seconds later, another call came from the same number. Then a text message arrived. Ethan, congratulations. We should have dinner soon. There are many things we need to discuss. I read it once before locking my phone again. Daniel laughed. 3 weeks ago, he couldn't wait to welcome Victor into the family. And today he suddenly remembers your family. I slipped the phone into my pocket. I'm not interested. Grace nodded with approval. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Before I could reply, another notification appeared. This time it wasn't a message. It was a live interview with Victor. Someone had asked him about the acquisition. His confident smile was gone. He looked uncomfortable. The reporter asked, Did you know Ethan Carter personally? Victor forced a laugh. We've met a few times. Any comment on his incredible success? I'm sure he worked very hard. I watched the interview quietly. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. The man who had looked down on me in the restaurant suddenly realized I wasn't the struggling dreamer he had IMA. Thought the flood of calls would slow down by evening. It only became worse. My assistant knocked on my office door. Ethan, every conference room is full. Why? Reporters, investors, business leaders. They all want 5 minutes with you. I smiled tiredly. Tell them I'll schedule interviews next week. They won't like that. They don't have to. She nodded and quietly left. A moment later, Grace walked in holding another stack of messages. You've received invitations from 3 television networks. I'll review them later. And 2 investment firms want private meetings. They had 7 years to meet me. Grace couldn't hide her smile. I was hoping you'd say that. Before we could continue, Daniel stepped inside. You should see this. He handed me his tablet. A financial news website had published a headline beside my photograph. From unknown programmer to one of the nation's youngest tech success stories. I stared at the article without saying a word. Daniel looked at me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about the apartment where this dream started. The one with the leaking roof? I nodded. Back then, nobody believed I could build anything important. Grace smiled warmly. We believed. You and Daniel never stopped. She looked directly into my eyes. And that's why today feels personal. My phone vibrated again. This time, the caller ID showed an old investor who had laughed at my first business presentation. I declined the call. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Not even curious? No. You don't want to hear his apology? If he didn't believe in me when I had nothing, his congratulations mean very little now. Grace quietly placed a hand on my shoulder. You've changed. You've grown. She smiled. That's even better. I walked to the office window and looked down at the crowd of reporters gathering outside the building. 3 weeks earlier, people had looked at me with pity. Today, they looked. I had barely stepped out of my office when my phone rang again. This time, I recognized the number immediately. Sophia. My thumb hovered over the screen for several seconds. Grace noticed. You don't have to answer. I know. So will you? I let the phone ring until it stopped. A second later, another call came. Then another. Finally, a message appeared. Ethan, please talk to me. I didn't know. Please. I stared at the words without replying. Daniel walked over and quietly read the message. Looks like she finally learned the truth. I think so. What are you going to do? I slipped the phone into my pocket. Nothing. Nothing. I spent weeks trying to explain my dreams while she was listening to someone else's promises. Grace nodded slowly. Now she wants to explain herself. I looked out through the glass wall, overlooking the city. Some conversations arrived too late. Before anyone could speak again, the office receptionist hurried toward us. Mr. Carter, there are television crews downstairs. How many? At least 6. And security? They're keeping everyone outside, but the reporters keep asking for a statement. Daniel smiled. You become very popular. I was happier when nobody knew my name. Grace laughed. I don't believe that. It's true. She folded her arms. Then why did you work so hard? I looked at her and answered honestly. I wanted to build something meaningful, not become famous. She smiled. And that's exactly why people respect you. My phone buzzed once more. Another message from Sophia. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I need to explain everything. I read it twice before locking the screen. Daniel studied my face. Does it hurt? I took a slow breath. Less than it did 3 weeks ago. And now I finally understand something. What? The person who truly loves you doesn't wait until the world tells them your value. The elevator doors opened behind us. The conference room overlooking the city was already full when I walked in. Television cameras pointed toward the stage. Reporters whispered to one another while photographers adjusted their lenses. Grace leaned closer. Are you ready? I smiled. As ready as I'll ever be. Daniel straightened my tie. Just be yourself. That's the man who built this company. I walked to the podium. The room immediately fell silent. One reporter raised her hand. Mr. Carter, how does it feel to become one of the country's youngest founders to complete a deal of this size? I answered honestly. It feels less like a finish line and more like the beginning of a much bigger responsibility. Another reporter stood. Many people describe you as an overnight success. Would you agree? I smiled. There are no overnight successes. There are only years of work that people never see. Several journalists nodded while writing down my words. A third reporter asked, what kept you going when others doubted you? I paused for a moment. I stopped measuring my future by other people's opinions. The room grew quiet again. No one asked about Sophia. No one mentioned Victor. For the first time in weeks, my story belonged to me instead of my heartbreak. When the conference ended, applause filled the room. As I stepped away from the podium, Grace smiled proudly. You handled that perfectly. I just told the truth. Daniel laughed. Funny how the truth finally has a microphone. Outside the building, Hundreds of reporters continued broadcasting the story. Across the city, people who had ignored me now wanted interviews, partnerships, and photographs. I accepted none of them that day. Instead, I walked back into my office, looked through the glass of the skyline, and quietly reminded myself that success had never been about proving anyone wrong. It had always been about proving to myself that I was strong enough to keep believing when nobody else did. And somewhere, 3 days passed after the press conference. Life finally began to settle into a routine again. I buried myself in meetings, expansion plans, and interviews, trying to stay focused on the future instead of the past. Every hour kept my mind busy, but every night the memories returned. Late one evening, I arrived home exhausted. As I reached for my apartment door, I noticed someone sitting quietly on the hallway bench. At first, I couldn't recognize her, and she slowly stood. Sophia. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. I've been waiting for 2 hours. I unlocked the door without answering. If you're here to congratulate me, you're late. She lowered her head. I didn't come for that. I stepped inside. You can have 5 minutes. She followed me into the apartment. The moment she entered, she stopped walking. Every corner of the room carried a memory. The bookshelf we built together. The small dining table where we celebrated birthdays with cheap takeout because we couldn't afford restaurants. The old couch where we spent countless evenings dreaming about the future. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I never thought I'd see this place again. I quietly closed the door. What do you want, Sophia? She struggled to answer. I made a terrible mistake. I remained silent. I've replayed that afternoon in my head every single day. So have I. She looked directly into my eyes. I was wrong. I crossed my arms. About what? About leaving you. The room became painfully quiet. She took one hesitant step closer. I loved you. I slowly shook my head. No. She blinked. What? You loved the version of me you thought would become rich. Tears streamed down her face. That's not true. It is. No, Ethan. Please listen. I listened for 7 years. She reached toward me, but I quietly stepped back. The distance between us suddenly felt much greater than the few feet separating us. For the first time since tea, Sophia slowly lowered her hand after I stepped away. I know you don't believe me, she whispered. I don't. You have every reason not to. I stayed silent. She looked around the apartment again, her eyes stopping on the kitchen table. Do you remember the night we ate instant noodles because we couldn't afford groceries? I remember. You apologized for not giving me a better life. I nodded once. And do you remember what I told you? I looked at her without answering. I said, as long as we're together, I'll never feel poor. A bitter smile crossed my face. I remember every word. She wiped another tear from her cheek. I meant it back then. What changed? She hesitated. I started comparing our life to everyone else's. Through social media? She nodded slowly. Every day, I saw expensive vacations, designer clothes, luxury homes, and perfect relationships. I kept asking myself why everyone else seemed to be moving forward while we stayed in the same place. So you decided money was more important than loyalty. I didn't realize what I was doing. I sighed. You realized at the moment you took Victor's gifts. Her eyes widened. You know about that? Emma told me. She covered her face with both hands. I was ashamed. You should have been honest. I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd think I didn't believe in you anymore. I looked at her quietly. But you didn't. She broke down crying. I know. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The apartment felt heavy with memories neither of us could escape. Then Sophia looked at me again. Ethan, please. What? Give me one chance to fix this. I shook my head. You already had thousands of chances. I'll do anything. Can you erase that day in the restaurant? She lowered her eyes. No. Can you give me back the trust one lost? No. Can you make me forget watching you walk away with another man? She couldn't answer. See. I slowly lowered my phone after Grace into the call. Sophia searched my face. What happened? I slipped the phone into my pocket. It doesn't matter. She took another step toward me. It matters if it's making you look like that. I sighed. It isn't about me. Then tell me. I can't. She nodded sadly. I guess I lost the right to ask. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. The apartment felt smaller than ever. Finally, she whispered, "Is there really nothing I can say to change your mind?" I answered honestly, "If I take you back today, how will I ever know whether you're here because you love me or because the whole country now knows I'm successful?" She closed her eyes. I've asked myself that same question every day. And what's your answer? I don't know. Her honesty caught me by surprise. I wish I could prove my heart. You had that chance before the cameras arrived. She looked around the apartment once more. I used to dream about growing old here with you. So did I. I threw that dream away. You did. Another silence settled between us. This time, neither of us tried to fill it. She finally reached in her purse and placed a small key on the table. "Our apartment key," she whispered. I kept hoping I'd use it again. I looked at the key but didn't touch it. "I think it's time you let go." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I already lost you. You lost my trust." She nodded slowly. "That's even harder to replace." She turned toward the front door, then stopped with her hand on the handle. "Ethan, yes. I truly hope one day you find someone who loves you the way I should have." I took a slow breath. "I hope one day you learn that loyalty is worth more than luxury." She gave a small nod. Without another word, she opened the door and walked into the hallway. The soft click of the closing door echoed through the apartment. For several moments, I simply stood there. Then my phone vibrated. I barely slept that night. Sophia's tears, the empty hook where our engagement photo had hung, and Grace's warning kept replaying in my mind. By sunrise, I was already in my office. Grace walked in carrying a thick folder. "I didn't think you'd beat me here. I needed something to keep my mind busy." She placed a folder on my desk. "Olivia sent these." I opened it slowly. Inside were company registrations, bank transfers, property records, and financial statements connected to Victor's businesses. I frowned. This is a lot, and she's still investigating. I looked at Grace. "Do you think Victor knows?" "Not yet." "What about Sophia?" Grace shook her head. "I don't think she has any idea." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Hello." A calm woman's voice replied. "Mr. Carter, this is Olivia Brooks. Grace told me you were investigating Victor." "I am. What did you find?" "I can't publish everything yet, but I wanted to ask you one question." "Go ahead. Did Victor ever discuss his investments with you?" "No." "Did he ever ask about your company?" I thought back to the restaurant. He acted like I wasn't worth his time. "I see." She paused. "The documents suggest several of his companies exist only on paper." I leaned forward. "So you're saying they're fake?" "I'm saying I need more evidence before making that claim." "I understand. But if the remaining documents confirm what I've already found." She stopped for a moment. "This story could become one of the biggest financial scandals of the decade." After the call ended, I stared quietly at the folder. Grace watched my expression. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking revenge isn't necessary." She smiled. "Because the truth is already doing the work." I nodded. I spent weeks wondering whether justice would ever come. And now I think it already started. I closed the folder and stood outside.